You're listening to IHC's podcast. Today's topic is Culture is Medicine.
Welcome to the IHC podcast, our Culture is Medicine segment. My name is Marissa Hemstreet, and I am from the Canyoncito Band of Navajos. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm also the communications coordinator for the Indian Health Center of Santa Clara Valley, where we provide medical, dental, counseling, WIC, and prevention services to over 23,000 members, while specializing in the unique healthcare needs of American Indians and Alaska Natives. Today, joining us is Rayne Liska.
Hello, my name is Rayne Liska. My pronouns are he, him, or they, them. My title currently is I'm a full-time student at San Jose State University studying social work and art. My tribal affiliation is with the Hopi Tribe of Northern Arizona, and I am part of the Forehead Sun Clan as well as the Water and Snake Clan. I'm originally from Colorado, Cortez, Colorado, tiny town, southwest Colorado, but have lived in the Bay Area for about 10 years now, so it's pretty much home at this point. So, yeah.
Nice. Same here, 2014.
Yeah, 2014.
We've been here 10 years. We might as well, it's our second home.
Yeah, it is second home, yeah.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I got to learn about you recently is that you are a double major at San Jose State University.
Correct.
You're majoring in social work and then another major in art.
Yes.
What got you interested in those studies?
Yeah. With social work, I think it was a accumulation of things. I had started previously at a junior college at De Anza studying child development. I had always loved really working with kids and thought that was kind of the trajectory I wanted to head, but then over time realized that I would like to do something a little more broad, focused on families, especially marginalized families. And so when I made the transition to San Jose State, I decided to do social work because it kind of fit that broad bill, I guess, of helping entire people groups rather than maybe just specifically children. And so, that's kind of initially what got me interested in social work. And then through my study, I realized that there's a large gap, I think, within social work and the overlap of Native communities and how they tend to be underrepresented and underprioritized. And so that's another big passion of why I wanted to study social work. As far as art has always been a huge part of my life. It has helped me in my adolescence through development of just allowing a form of expression. And then as an adult, I've learned that it's really almost a healing practice, I think, for me now. It's like I chose to study art because I knew I need art in my life anyways, and so why not, kind of pursue a degree in it to get me motivated to learn more about it and kind of get out of my head and actually start creating things and making things. And so it's been a wonderful experience to just kind of channel ways of healing, whether it's things I've experienced in the past or just other maybe forms of expression like into art. And so that's kind of the main reasons why I chose to study those two fields.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. And then part of our initial discussion when we were first talking about all this before we had you on that episode was at San Jose State's NASIC Center, the Native American Indigenous Student Success Center. And I just liked how you were talking about, social work and art kind of working hand in hand. And I think that you were saying the art is a therapeutic way to kind of process all of the things and topics that you cover in social work that can be kind of heavy.
Correct. Yeah, I think I learned through social work and studying it that you are handling just such heavy topics, and it's not always guaranteed that you are given the right tools to kind of process those within yourself even. It's like you can kind of have vicarious trauma impact you or trigger you from your own experiences. So I think anything dealing with social work or anything that you're handling, kind of intense emotional situations or sometimes traumatic situations too. It's like you need that outlet of expression or release of some sort. I think art has also provided me a way to process, I think, all of that as well. And just like you were saying, just find a way to channel that energy into something positive and creative. So
yeah, I just like hearing how they relate. So
yeah,
thank you for sharing that with us and agreeing to be on the IHC podcast.
Yes, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me as a guest.
Yeah, of course. So June is Men's Health Awareness Month. That's part of the reason we brought Rayne in today to talk with us. So could you start by sharing what Men's Health Awareness Month means to you and why it's important to discuss men's health, particularly in the context of American Indian, Alaska Native communities?
Yeah, of course. I think men's health, to me, encompasses so many different categories. It's not only physical. I think when we talk about health, it's so important to remember the emotional, spiritual, and mental aspects of health, kind of a holistic perspective. And I think for men in particular, it's something that doesn't get prioritized enough, specifically when we're talking about like emotional and mental well-being. I think a lot of times there's a big physical side of mental health, of hitting the gym, getting gains, whatever it is. I think that's kind of a part of our society, and there tends to be a lack or an undervaluing of prioritizing, I guess, mental health or emotional health within men, and spiritual health too. I think in the context of indigeneity, health is something that needs to be talked about, specifically for men that are Indigenous, because we're underrepresented, I think, and there's not a lot of support, I think, specifically for Native men, challenge with the challenges of living in our current society, or things handling, I know within my own family, like handling things around toxic masculinity, or kind of trying to adopt these roles of what you think a man should be. And maybe that's not really it, or struggling with understanding what a man should be or what that can look like. So I think within the dynamic of indigeneity, you have a lot of men, I think, struggling with representation of what maybe a good man looks like, or having examples of that. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's really crucial that men are more vulnerable, especially in the Native community. There's a tendency to be very stoic and strong and not want to express those softer or more difficult parts of emotion or mm-hmm. vulnerability. And so I think those things should be prioritized more.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that point of view, because like you were sharing, like so often in Indigenous communities, Latinx communities, mm-hmm. that we see that, oh no, like there's such heartfelt ideas about what a man is, what mm-hmm. they should do. And then even, as a woman, I've caught myself saying mm-hmm. those things to my partner. Right. And my partner's mm-hmm. like, excuse me, equal rights.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's important. It's like, I think it's, I'm glad you spoke on that too as women. It's like, it's also, it gets so deep seated, I guess, into our minds of what these stereotypical ideas of what a man should be, and really they're not healthy for anyone. Mm-hmm. Women, men, our whole society. It's like we could benefit from men being taught to be more gentle, soft, nurturing. Mm-hmm. I think all of that is really crucial.
Yeah, and then like even with my upbringing, I was taught like you can do whatever a boy can do. Mm. So I, in my head, I'm like, why does it make sense to not allow, men their ability to express themselves and mm-hmm. do things that quote unquote women do, like cry, express their emotions, have that freedom and that unconditional love to be who they are unapologetically. Yeah. But, women so often, like, well, more, I think so recently, that women are afforded that right in that space. But mm-hmm. I feel like men's kind of get left behind in that aspect.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think kind of going back to where I grew up, it was in a very rural part of Colorado, close to the Ute Reservation. And I think in that space, too, where you have, which a lot of tribes are kind of in these rural areas, you have a tendency to be very hardworking, and with that hardworking mentality, there comes this priority of being strong, not soft, not able to express your emotions, kind of this tough, rugged, I'll stuff my emotions down. And I definitely saw that, I think, around me growing up. I was lucky enough, I think, to have a dad that I felt like was somewhat emotionally comfortable expressing emotions like sadness or sympathy or compassion, and that was helpful to me to witness that within my own father and kind of how he stood out against the rest of the population within my town, and provided me with a healthy example of like, hey, it's okay if I have these emotions that are difficult to express, and or it's okay for me to even cry or be soft. I think that is a wonderful thing to be, and so I think, again, having that example was really important to me growing up. So,
I'm glad you had that family role model, that male role model, and that hopefully, that you were saying, didn't really embody, what toxic masculinity is. So you felt safe and you were afforded that space. So I'm happy for your upbringing.
Thank you. Yeah.
With my dad, he was in the military. So in the military, they kind of beat the emotions out of you.
Yeah.
So in that respect, he was kind of in a dissociative state most of my childhood. Only now as an adult am I getting to kind of, peel back the layers of the onion. Yeah. And I wrote an essay about him a while back, and I called him my little Batman. And just, he's out saving the world. He was in the military, and then he was a police officer for 16 years. And had so many accidents. He got ran over by a taxi driver.
Oh my gosh.
3 times within 10 minutes. The taxi driver rolled over him. It was like, oh no, I'm still on him. Reversed off of him. Oh my gosh. My dad was screaming in pain, and so he's like, I'm still on you.
Oh my God. Wow. Yeah. Tough. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he's had a lot of fun in his life, a lot of action. And I think with that aspect of, being in the military and then police work kind of didn't give him a lot of room to deal with emotions. So now it's nice kind of seeing him as a whole person and unlearning some toxic masculinity ways of thinking, especially in the Indigenous culture. Traditionally, Navajo women aren't really supposed to hunt. And he took me on my first hunting trip, just us, this past year, in September.
Okay, wonderful.
It was a really good time. Didn't catch anything. But, I mean, he afforded me that rite of passage.
Right.
And he was just like, I wanted to spend time with you. And, I'm trying to put those old notions of, our traditions aside and just, spend time with my daughter. Not so much
it's wonderful.
Putting her in a gender box.
Exactly. I think that, you touched on a few things. I think one of those things is, the idea of re-healing kind of these parts that maybe our parents or other men in our life have never been, taught. I think there can be a tendency, you don't have tools to be able to express healthy, or you've never been shown how to be vulnerable with people. And so finding ways to kind of reconnect with that or overcome, toxic masculinity by reclaiming maybe some things like your dad did with you, with hunting or whatever it might be. I think those small steps can really measure up to something much bigger. So I'm happy that your dad is seemingly on the right path and, wanting to reconnect with you.
Yeah, I feel like we're all on this learning journey, and we can all be better than we were yesterday.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that he continues on that, because I know, sometimes old dogs, they don't want to learn new tricks.
Exactly. It can be a little tough. So,
he's my little old man. He'll get there one day.
Get there.
Yeah. Get there. So what stereotypes have you encountered, and what does it mean to be a man, both in broader society and in the Indigenous community?
Yeah. I think when I think about the stereotypes I've encountered, a lot of them revolve around gender identity and also sexuality. I think those two things are heavily tied to what it means to be a male or masculine in our society. I am a queer identifying individual and have been ever since I was a kid. And so I think growing up in a space that was largely conservative and not that accepting of LGBTQ plus people, it felt very unsafe for me to be who I was. And I felt threatened in my masculinity of am I a man if I don't want to hunt, or I don't want to do the guns or the sports or whatever it is, it's I think all of those things kind of were taught to me in the environment I was in to be an example of what masculinity was. And so a lot of those stereotypes I adopted into myself, and I allowed them to suppress parts of myself. And it wasn't comfortable, and I think it led to a lot more pain and a lot more misunderstanding between me and those around me. So, I think that experiencing those stereotypes definitely followed me up until adulthood, and then trying to unlearn a lot of those things as an adult has been difficult, and I've needed assistance, I think, from mental health counseling or supportive friends, or, again, other examples of what, to me, of what healthy masculine men can look like. So as far as like in our broader society, I think there's so many things that are tossed our way as to what men should be through, I mean, the latest Marvel movie to, you know, whatever book you're reading to, you know, our current people within government. It's like there's just so much that is revolves around this idea of patriarchy and men being kind of in control of everything. And I think it takes an active mindset to somewhat unlearn all of that. And as you touched on before, it's like sometimes it's easy for even those outside of masculinity or those who identify as masculine to not also like uphold those things or kind of unlearn those things. I think a lot of times it impacts all of us in ways through our subconscious as well. And so I noticed even as a young kid, like I would change how I walked, you know, or I'd deepen my voice. I remember answering the phone and people always being like, "Hello, Mrs. Liska," like my mom. And I'm like, "What? I thought I'm a boy. Like, you should be able to understand that." But just feeling threatened in that of like something as simple as your voice can be, you know, an identifier of what masculinity is. And that's really not true. It's like that all of those, I think, false narratives can seep into our minds. And if we're not actively trying to unlearn them, they can hinder our ability to grow. So.
100%.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, I think as a woman or a cisgender woman, growing up, like we don't really typically think of our voice. So even just hearing that, I'm like, oh my goodness, like that's also like a whole other, you know, like a glass shattering moment. Like you don't see it until you see it type thing. So. Thank you for sharing that plight with us.
Yeah.
That's not something I really thought about. I mean, I did get confused for my mom.
Right, yes.
But I'm like, we don't sound alike. But it wasn't so much as the, you know, you're misgendering my voice.
Right, yeah.
So that's hard.
Yeah. You can feel, I think, a little bit, and not that it's a bad thing. Like, I think a lot of times, you know, people might feel that how you present or things like that have to look a certain way. And I think as our society is progressing, I think we've noticed that, no, there's so many ways you can identify. And there's this huge rainbow of, you know, gender expression and what individuals can look like, sound like, behave like. And so I think it's important to always keep that in mind, that it's like, hey, it's not just one or two or black and white. It's like, it's a mixture of things, and it's complex, and that's a good thing, you know.
Yes, 100%. And then also what you're sharing about like how growing up you didn't feel super connected to sports or doing certain things. For me, I was blessed to have the family that I do because I was allowed that, you know, room to express my gender through different clothing. I didn't wear traditionally, you know, girl clothing. When I was younger, I wore like board shorts and T-shirts and chains, and I was able to go to the skate park. I was able to play, you know, water polo and soccer and go rock climbing and go to the gym. As soon as I turned 13, I was hitting that gym.
Like, I'm in it.
I tried to sneak in there with my grandma like a few months before I turned 13. Like, no, you have to go to the little kids area. I'm like, no. Like, I'm ready to lift. I wanted to move. I wanted to do things. And I just wanted to, you know, express myself, you know, physically. And so just hearing that, you know, that you felt like, or that it was that way when you were younger, that you didn't get that full expression of your gender. And it was never really a question for me, even if my gender expression was more in alignment with a boy. And it wasn't until I hit, like, puberty that I was like, estrogen, I am a woman, hear me roar. And like, then I started to play with more feminine clothes. But even then, at that time, I was like, I'm not girly enough. I don't look like all the other girls that, you know, are my age. Yeah, sure, I have long hair and I talk like a girl and I technically am a girl, but like I don't feel in alignment with the way that it doesn't feel in alignment with like the way people are perceiving me. So it was just this like strange time, puberty-wise. Eventually, I did grow more comfortable with my feminine side, and now I don't mind expressing it. But 13, 14, 15-year-old me was like, I am confused. I don't feel like I am me in this body. I feel like this is just a vessel. And so it took a while to grow into that. So, you know, it's hard hearing that our experiences are so different in the sense that you weren't afforded that room. So I apologize for you there. And hopefully, moving forward with our youth, that we give them that room, because, either we were or we weren't afforded that space.
Right. I liked what you said, specifically around the idea of not enough, like this not enoughness of whatever it is, whether it's your gender, whether it's your ethnicity or culture that you're a part of. It's something that I think we commonly struggle with in our society, of this, like, I'm not enough of a woman, I'm not enough of a man. And I think inherently we're fed this idea that we lack something, and that we're not given all the parts of ourselves when we're born. It's like that somehow we need to attach more and more things, or that we're lacking something. And I really believe that, like, none of us are lacking. All of us exist within us. It takes time to kind of reconnect to those parts in us that are maybe hidden, but we're not lacking anything. It doesn't exist somewhere outside of us. It exists, like, inside of us, and it takes that kind of introspection and that time to, like, really, I guess maybe what they say of, like, love yourself and understand yourself, and get to know who you are, and your authenticity or authentic self. But yeah, I think, like you were saying too, a lot of this newer generation, I think we can learn from these past experiences that haven't been healthy ways of coping with life that we've kind of put up with, whether it's adopting certain practices to fit into our category, or whether it's, like, suppressing other important parts of ourselves to better navigate certain areas. It's like all of that we can kind of shed, because we can help maybe youth understand that, like, hey, all of this exists inside of you. It's just, a matter of tapping into it. What does that look like for you? So
part of me is healing in this conversation.
Yeah,
I like it.
Good.
And today we were talking a little bit about, like, toxic masculinity. How would you define that?
Yeah, good question. I think it can look so different. I think we can have overt examples of toxic masculinity. I think some of those are the typical, jock stereotype in a movie, where he's kind of just seemingly aggressive, rude, doesn't really care about other people's opinions. Everybody's rooting him on for him because somehow he embodies strength, because he bullies people or kind of forces himself to the top. I think that is kind of an overt expression of toxic masculinity, but I think there's also sometimes a more subtle version of toxic masculinity, which looks like who has the last word in a sentence, or in a conversation. It's like I've encountered that so often. I think when, in a group of women and there's one man, and for whatever reason, he just always seems to, like, have to have the last word, or even in my own experience of, working at a preschool for a bit, I was a teacher's aide and helping out two wonderful teachers. They were both women, but often parents would come into the classroom and assume automatically that I was the person in charge, that I was the lead teacher, because I was presented as masculine. And so I think that can even be kind of a subtle form of toxic masculinity, where it's kind of ingrained in our subconscious of, like, who gets the last say, who has the power in the room, who holds all the chips, essentially. And so I think sometimes those more subtle versions of toxic masculinity are what you have to be more mindful of and careful of. Even within my own self, it's like, as I'm navigating the world, it's like trying to unlearn those biases that I've been taught to, like, hold on to, my whole life. And so, I think just being aware of that toxic masculinity doesn't always have to look like something overt and aggressive. It can also look really subtle, and it takes a critical eye to notice that as well. So in a roundabout way, I guess that's my definition of toxic masculinity.
Of course, yeah. And, like, I've seen that in the fitness community. So myself, I went to a Fit Expo in Santa Clara, which is really fun. It was really cool. You get to learn about all these up-and-coming, like, wellness products and see all these fitness demonstrations. There's a bunch of different, like, fighting exhibitions. It's really cool. But I was there, and I was just taking a look at some new merchandise. I was like, oh, I could use a new, like, shirt or something, whatever it is. And I'm always looking for sponsorships. So I'm like, give me something.
Get those sponsors.
Yeah, I was like, come on, let me influence. But one of the booths that we went to was, like, a T-shirt booth, and the person that was talking to us was just automatically put their attention to my partner. He's taller. He's just like naturally like a little football player looking guy. And I'm like, cool for you, even though you don't exercise at all. I love that for you so much. And the person was just like, yeah, like we're just looking for some trainer t-shirts because I wanted something that said trainer on the back. And they're just like, oh, and so automatically they're talking to him. They're like, oh, so how long you been training? He's whoa, I don't care for the gym. That's gross.
Yeah. Not his thing.
And he was just like, she's the one who does it. And he was just like, oh.
Right.
But it was a...
Exactly, yeah.
And I've also seen that in other aspects of like the wellness industry where I see a trainer where I see a trainer working with someone and the person that he's working with maybe is a little bit slender. And so when folks come up to them and say, hey, I realize that you guys are training, and they'll divert their attention to the person who's a little bit slender and say like, how long have you been training? And the person that's also my friend that's a little bit heavier set but has been training for extensive amount of time, that he just kind of gets brushed to the side. It's like it's either like who's bigger, who's smaller, or who's the guy in the room that we're looking for. And so it's just interesting to see it kind of play out in the wild that way.
Yeah. Who takes up the most space, even that, again, a subtlety is like, I've noticed sometimes how I walk, or even like my partner, how he walks. I'm like, man, you put on like a different walk sometimes, when you're around certain groups of people, because it is a little bit broader, and it's like there's a subconscious need, I think, for sometimes men to take up more space. And like you said, it's just a form of subtle toxic masculinity, I think. So, yeah.
It's happening in the wild, right in front of us. How does toxic masculinity affect men's mental health and physical health, especially in like your community?
Yeah. I think that can look, again, a variety of different ways. I think there is a big impact on the mental health, which in turn impacts the physical health. I know within my own family, I have a lot of male individuals in my family that have struggled with alcoholism, and I think that is in direct tie to somewhat these issues with toxic masculinity impacting their mental health and then in turn impacting their physical health. And I think there is a tendency for men to stuff things in and to not, again, express or to hide things or to not feel comfortable enough to open up in certain spaces or to sometimes even relax. I've noticed that too. I think within some of my family members, I've noticed like this difficulty to sometimes relax into a state of being that's gentle and soft, and I don't have to be on all the time. No one's attacking me. There's nothing going on, but there's this intensity and tenseness, I think, within men sometimes that sometimes they're not even aware of. And so in that, you're looking for ways to kind of cope with these difficult issues of not being able to express. And so I think you can turn to sometimes, unfortunately, substances, sometimes other forms of unhealthy coping mechanisms, whether that's shutting yourself off or isolating yourself or ignoring important parts about yourself and your relationships with others. I think men can struggle, especially, I think, with that. And I think, too, because of that, there's also a tendency to allow men to have that space or to to where others maybe aren't as open to trying to help those individuals come out of that space, because I think it's kind of natural that it's like, hey, all men kind of cope with this in a similar way. Maybe that is the right way, without realizing that, no, it's like these people are struggling and ultimately they need, comfort and guidance and healthy forms of coping rather than just maybe putting it into something else or not prioritizing their own mental health or physical well-being. I think, too, something within the physical side of things is this, again, kind of over prioritization of looking a certain way. I think that is a huge thing also within the kind of male atmosphere. I think there gets a lot of focus on women in particular around issues of body image or of how you look, but that same impact also influences men, I think, in a pretty significant way of wanting to look a certain way, being a certain height, having the bigger arms, a broad chest, or whatever it might be, looking apart, I think that it's kind of inherently not how everyone looks, and sometimes not an ideal image of what health even looks like. And so I think that can also heavily influences men, I think, in their adoption of kind of these toxic masculinity influences in their life. So, yeah, I think those two things I think stick out to me a lot as the isolation piece of toxic masculinity, as well as this kind of like of wanting to look a certain way in order to be perceived as more masculine. I think maybe a good example of this is I had somebody share with me that they, as a male, he was sharing with me that he's like, man, I just wish there was some form of like an initiation process that men could go through to just be like, you go through this and then boom, everyone knows you're a man. And it's simple, easy, like that. And I think even that mentality of like just that, I think what he lacked, or what he didn't realize, was like that already exists inside of you. Like how you identify as a man, because you are a man. That's how you behave in life. That you don't need to prove that to anyone. And I think there is kind of this this mentality of wanting to prove something, and how that again, it's that toxic masculinity piece of really oppressing people, oppressing them to not even feel comfortable in their own bodies or comfortable in their own personhood. And so, I don't think we need initiation processes. It's like, I think we need to recognize that we are all, all that we need, I guess, inside, all that we need to kind of be whole individuals already exists inside of us, like I said before. But yeah, just another component, I guess, of it.
Emphasis.
Yeah, emphasis on that.
It just reminds me of Josh Peck from Drake and Josh.
Emphasis.
Emphasis. Sorry. ADD and echolalia. Anyways, one of the things that you said was, sometimes people associate toxic masculinity with like a certain body type, and like that they need to achieve a certain thing. And even for the folks who have achieved that quote unquote like super buff, can't put their arms down thing, they also have their own stereotypes of being, like you were saying, a jock who maybe has no empathy, or they might seem mean, or just because of their size. But maybe they were an athlete and they just never stopped training, because training is lifelong. It's gonna go until you're an elder. And even they have their own stereotypes that they fight against, that they're somehow like more aggressive because of their size, or that somehow they're more violent because of their size, or that they're not intelligent because of their size, because there's also that preconceived notion that, oh, these muscular people must be dumb because they're so muscular and they're little meatheads. And so it's just interesting to see that, for smaller, like if I could have you imagine like a smaller man saying like, oh, I want to be this big buff guy, but then also like once they get there, there's all these other stereotypes to deal with. So it's like you don't win. Yeah,
it's a lose-lose.
Yes, and that, all bodies, wherever you are in your wellness journey, whatever that looks like for you, are good bodies. That's something that I'm always being reminded of.
Yes.
And even when I'm being hard on myself for whichever size I look like, or whatever number on the BMI scale I look like, that, all bodies are good bodies. I'm happy that my skin surrounds my organs and keeps them safe.
Right.
And I hope that people start looking at their bodies that way, and not so much as this thing that they're ashamed of for the world to see, because it's not for the world, it's for you.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. I think that is a crucial key part, I think, of kind of healing these parts that have been damaged by oppressive mindsets. And so wonderful thing to kind of unlearn, I think, in our process of healing. It's like our bodies take care of us, and we need to recognize the support that they give us and how beautiful they truly are. It doesn't matter what you see on Instagram or what you see, I think, in movies. It's like it's easy to let those impact, I guess, or blind you to what beauty or health looks like. So unlearning those is key.
Yeah, and same thing with comparison. No one other person's journey is going to be the exact same as yours.
Right.
And so what if this person is, super huge muscular-wise? Like, their journey was probably hard. Sometimes what I learned from a lot of the, heavier set powerlifters that are men is that sometimes, they just got into it for fun. It was fun, and so they just kept with it. Other folks, it's because of a sport, and they stayed with it. Another example would be like Terry Crews, where he talks about why he gained muscle. When he was younger, he had an abusive father, and he wanted to be strong enough so he can defend his mother if, need came calling again, and then also to defend himself because he was also a target of his father's abuse. And so, the common joke in the gym is, these people are fighting their demons and then they're lifting those weights.
I know. It's again, we're talking about, ways to kind of express emotion. Sometimes gym is that, whatever it is, finding that healthy outlet. So, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just important to keep those things in mind for folks who are like, the gym's not for me. That's okay. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Yes, plus, you can get the same amount of exercise doing anything else.
Yes.
Hiking, dancing, I don't know, swimming.
Yeah.
And there's no weights to lift there. It's safe.
You're in the water, honey.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
So, do you feel like in the through your culture that you've that's shaped your view of what a man is?
Oh yes, heavily. I think within Hopi culture, women are primarily in charge of a lot of things. They are bearers of clans, and so that's through our mom side or through our grandma's side is how we get our clans. They also usually have the rights to land, or when things, like say if somebody passes away, usually it gets passed on to the first daughter, the land or the property. So within Hopi culture, women are like key leaders within kind of upholding tribal traditions as well as like preserving, I guess, these practices. And so in that mindset is always, I think, really impacted my development too through life, and having a mom that was very strong and somewhat very different than the culture that surrounded my immediate community outside of like res life and outside of like Hopi culture. And the town I grew up in, I think a lot of women kind of fit into those traditional roles of being, a housewife, very docile, very quiet, not having very much opinion. Here comes my mom. She's like, here I come. I got opinions to share, and I want them to be heard. And I think that really taught me so much, I think, as a man, as to what women should look like in the amount of space that they should have. I think my mom was always a big proponent of speaking up when she felt like things were wrong. And I think that intimidated a lot of men, and I love that about my mom. It's like, I think it's something that is good. I think some men needed to be shook up and kind of realize that, hey, yeah, whoa, like, what am I doing? Or, what is... it isn't just my opinion that matters, it's like it's specifically women's opinion that matters so much. And again, I think in our society, patriarchy and this idea of men being in charge of everything is really prevalent. And so I'm so thankful to be a part of the Hopi Tribe, as well as having a mother as an example of women empowered, I think, of women being able to lead. Even in my current life, it's like women have taught me so much about what it means to be myself, and have been, I think, the biggest proponents of my growth and development. And so I think having that attached to my Hopi culture of it being kind of a group of people that prioritizes the voice of women has really helped influence, I think, my ability to be a comfortable, confident person, individual, male, human being. It's like all of that. I think it really helped shape me into the person I am today. So shout out, Mom. Love you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I could just see your mom just like charging in, like, excuse
me.
me.
Here comes Auntie. Yeah, she is.
But it's beautiful to see, women being like the embodiment of strength and just like that bravery. And it took me back to like when my mom and my dad met.
Oh, okay, cool.
They met in the Army. My mom worked on the civilian side, and they had a shared desk. There was renovation going on, and so my mom was like she's even like up until her passing, she's really like big about like if you walk into the house, you have to say hello to her, like make your presence known. And my dad ignored her day one. Like they met and he was like, I'm just sharing a desk with you. I don't know you, weirdo. And and I get that. I get both sides.
Yeah.
But she had said good morning to him. She's like, good morning, Sergeant Hemstreet. Right. And my dad was just like, okay, cool. And he just like kept walking. Oh. And she was like, you know what, sir? When someone says good morning, you say good morning back.
Good.
And he married that for,
I mean,
like 25 years. They were together. And so
that's amazing.
All the way up until her passing. But I'm just like, yes, strength, you know. Yeah. You need to make your presence known sometimes. You know, other times it's okay to sit back and relax.
Right. Yes.
Chill out.
Yes. Yeah, I think, like you were saying, I think it is key, I think, for... as we're talking about men's health, I think there's so much men can learn if they were able to take a cue and kind of sit back and maybe listen to the voices of women too. It might be able to help them understand themselves better and how to lead and how to be a vulnerable, strong individual. A key person, I think, in understanding what strength is to me too as a man or as a human or person was my nanny, my grandma on my mom's side. She was somebody that really, I think, embodied compassion. And to me that is so tied to strength, because I think within my nanny's life of having experienced, so much oppression, so much hurt from individuals, and this is something I think that is very different sometimes in how women can process trauma versus men, is that men sometimes choose to let those experiences harden them, and they become so shut off to the world around them. But my nanny was a perfect example of letting those things, yes, impact her, but also being able to let go of them and still remain compassionate regardless of how much oppression she faced. And to me, I'm like, that's the embodiment of strength and the embodiment of courage, the embodiment of so many things that we title as masculine, is being able to remain soft in a world that constantly wants to make you hard and wants to kind of beat you down, is not letting go of that piece of compassion, of looking for the good in humanity, of always recognizing kindness, of always valuing strength above power. I think it was key to me in understanding what strength is and what being a man is, So yeah, I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, strong nanas. I love it. Yes. My nana also had. Sorry, I'll probably cut this part out. But my nana, she was in a traditional marriage. She was the docile one. She bared 3 children for my grandpa Richard, and he cheated on her with the next door neighbor's wife. And my grandma had no control while they were married of her finances. She did not know how to pump gas. Right. She had no clue. She did not have a bank account. She did not know how to set up a bank account. She didn't own a car. Everything was in his name. Yeah. My nana was just traditional housewife, or was a nurse for some time in her life, but stopped working at the hospital as soon as she was, having her kids and stuff. And so once they divorced, she had to learn all these things about financial literacy, how to own a car, what does owning a car entail, and one of the things that she taught me when I was 10 was how to pump my own gas. Wow. And I'm like, I don't want to do that, Grandma. The handle's nasty. I was just I don't want to do this. And she really sat me down in the car and was just the first time I ever pumped gas. And I was like, no. She was like, I was an adult and I cried. And I was like, why did you cry, Grandma? I'm little. Yeah. I'm like, why, Grandma? Tell me. Yeah. And she was just saying it was because she didn't know how to do it. And she had to ask, a person who worked at the gas station to help her, to teach her these things about how to do it. Yeah. And she was just like, I don't ever want you to feel that powerless. Right. And so I want you to learn the things that I should have learned for myself, but I didn't have the opportunity to because I was sheltered so much of my life. And so she's like, I don't want you to feel like you ever need to rely on somebody. Wow. And so I think that had a part in why my mom was a little strong. Yeah. And we just keep getting stronger. So good luck to my grandchildren's partners because they're
going to be strong. Yeah, they're going to pump their own gas. Yeah. I love that. Oh, how wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So I'm just strong nanas. Yes. Beautiful children. hopefully stronger great-great-grandbabies.
Yes, definitely.
Who are your male role models? You did say that your dad was one, and what qualities do they have that help break them, help them break stereotypes?
Yeah. Again, wonderful question. I think my dad has been, I think, a good example in ways of being, again, kind of that compassionate, gentle person. I think anyone that meets my dad can attest to his kindness and ability to connect with others. He's a very jovial person, can literally make friends with anybody in line at a coffee shop, and has on multiple occasions. And I think he was a wonderful example to me of not letting pride get in the way of expressing emotion. I think there was countless times at certain movies or certain events where I would just look over and I would see him kind of tearing up and welling up. And I never took it as my dad was like weak or like, oh, why is he doing that? I always took it as like, wow, like to see somebody so moved, to be able to express that so openly was really important to me as a kid. I think another wonderful example of masculinity to me has been also my partner, Jake is his name. And I think with him, he's taught me how men can be leaders in a way that's not aggressive or overt or kind of forced. I think he's shown me how to lead kind of in this quiet, with this quiet strength. And I'm so appreciative of that in my own life, of having a wonderful example of what strength can look like, that it's not always overt or not always so big and grandiose, but it is kind of this, it can be this subtlety, this presence that an individual has that is confident. It's self-assured and recognizing that I know my path and I know how to advocate for my needs. I think that has been he's been a crucial part, I think, in my journey in helping me understand that. Even as far as health-wise, it's like I was a person that wasn't, going to my checkups all the time or things like that. And like him advocating for me and recognizing, telling me it's like, you have to advocate for this. It's like you have to be the one that's in charge, that your voice and your opinion and your all of that matters. And even within school, he's been a huge encouragement, I think, in that way too, of that. I grew up not really prioritizing, I think, the idea of college or education that way. It was I was always very intimidated by it, but it was through him and through also some other friends of mine that they just really made me feel like I can do this, and I can manage this, I can work through it, and if I don't, it's okay, I'll learn. It's a learning process, and so he's been, I think, a wonderful example of being that quiet, kind of steadfast strength that you need sometimes in life. A few other individuals off the top of my head. I think that I'm a big reader, love reading and love poetry. Ocean Vuong is a poet that I'm very into right now, and I think a lot of his poetry kind of speaks to the importance of gentleness and vulnerability, I think, within men's life. And he, I think he's also a queer identifying individual that's Vietnamese. And so having that perspective of a marginalized community that's gone through a lot of similar struggles as similar to the Native American community of being oppressed, it's I think he offers some key insights into what masculinity can look like, and that it can look like vulnerability. Another huge influence in my life is the writer, and he was a doctor too. He passed, but his name was Oliver Sacks, and he was a neurosurgeon, as well as did a lot of different studies and writings on people's brains. And I think his story of connecting with other individuals is something that taught me about masculinity, or about being a man that's able to be so compassionate to other individuals and like connect with individuals on a deep human level. So those individuals have been, I think, key in my understanding of what masculinity is and my own journey. So
I like that. You have your dad, who's been a positive role model about just being friendly and open. understanding. And your partner helped you learn a little bit about like leadership, and then you were saying both the poet and then the doctor that you learned from too about like not all brains are the same.
Right.
It's okay to express yourself in certain ways. I really resonate with that too. Like I was sharing earlier, like I grew up basically I don't know, I guess the term would be a tomboy. And that's an old one. I don't even hear that one anymore.
Yeah, no, I don't either. What's up with that? Bring back Tom. I like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so I like grew up, I guess, a tomboy, and I didn't feel like that closeness to like femininity, and I was like, ew, girls, cheerleaders, ew. And like just reclaiming that as an adult has been interesting, but I'm just happy that like my partner has allowed me to express myself however I need to, right. And has reminded me that like, because for a while I was like, how the heck do I do makeup? Like that's weird. You slap things on your face and you look different.
Of which, like, it pops off today. I like your eye makeup.
Thank
it's very
you.
Cute. Love
I was
it.
like, I'm going to wear blue and pink. I'm going to go blue.
Yeah, it's nice. I like it.
It's been fun to learn how to express myself that way, but also like my partner being there for that reassurance that, I don't need to do anything specific to my face. My face is my face, and he likes it, so cool. Yeah. And I grow to like it every day. And what's interesting is I've been seeing more of my mom's face in my face. My mom has passed away. She's been gone since 2017, I think. And so it's just been interesting that, while I miss her, and sometimes I will forget her face because ADD, right. We have that object impermanence to where if we don't see you, we forget you exist.
Yeah.
And I see my mom all the dang time because I see myself in the mirror.
I love that.
So not ever once do I forget
That's beautiful.
her.
Yeah.
Well, don't cry.
I know.
It's contagious.
No.
Okay.
And also shout out to like, healthy partners encouraging, your growth. I think I've learned that that's so key to have in any form of your life, whether it's a romantic partner or friends, like that support your growth and your change and your development is so key. So I'm happy you have that within your partner.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I'm happy that, our partners aren't just people who are a part of our life story, but they help write it, and they help us, accept certain parts, and hopefully we grow together instead of apart.
Yes.
So what advice do you have for young men dealing with the pressure to, conform to the ideals of toxic masculinity?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, take time to reflect, whatever that might look like. I think for a young individual, I think it can be uncomfortable to sometimes sit with yourself in kind of silence, or sit with yourself in a process of meditation, whether that looks like journaling, whether it looks like just sitting. Sometimes we're so disconnected from ourselves because we're so connected to everyone else or our phones or whatever's going on around us, that sometimes a key part of just tapping into and back into ourselves is just sitting. It's just sitting and listening to our bodies, taking time to listen to things going on around us too, and just kind of centering ourselves. I think that was key in my mindfulness journey and helped me. I think eventually, that one step can lead to these kind of bigger steps within growth. And so finding that way to kind of reflect or pause and connect back with yourself, I think is really key. Another piece of advice I have is to look to women. I think, actually, I know this might sound weird, I think, for understanding masculinity, but I think a key part of masculinity, at least within my journey, and I think the journey of other men too, was observing and learning from women how to be strong, how to be compassionate, take inventory of those people in your life that have been able to embody strength, and not the overt power hungry strength. I'm talking about the subtlety, the gentle strength that comes from overcoming oppression, that comes from sitting with your family members and hearing what they have to say, and creating space for others. Another area of advice I think I can give is seek counseling or help. I think with prioritizing your mental health. I think that gets so under prioritized within our society, specifically for men too. And so finding assistance to kind of maybe rebuild those parts of yourself that you feel disconnected from, or find healthier ways of coping, and also to notice the different ways toxic masculinity or biases have been built up in you. Sometimes it's helpful to get the perspective of another person. Sometimes we're blinded to those things that are impacting us. And so having that outside third person party, to kind of maybe look over or you talk with or kind of work things through with can be really helpful in your growth journey. Yeah. And also I think another key aspect is find a healthy way to express, whatever that is. Like for me, I think it was art and music, but for others, it might be the gym, it might be dancing, it might be cooking, a whole variety of things, a way to kind of express parts of yourself that can be difficult to put into words, and so need some other medium to kind of come out into the world. There's so much, I think, within all of us that we hold in and learn to stuff in. And if we're not processing or handling those things now, they're just going to show up later, and sometimes a more aggressive, more oppressive way. And so learning how to express that emotion right now, or those feelings right now, is key, I think, to your development as you venture into adulthood or venture on in life. It's finding that area of expression, I think, is really crucial to your betterment as an individual. So, yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't say that better myself. And even for like you were saying, internalizing these issues and these things that we face, and just bottling them up. Sometimes they can manifest in other ways. A few episodes ago, we had a person speaking about survivor advocacy as a victim of SA, sexual assault, and that she, instead of processing her feelings, it turned into an autoimmune disorder.
Right.
And because she didn't deal with those problems mentally with a therapist or anything, those problems still existed, and it turned into her losing her hair. And so it's better to learn how to process those things now or as soon as possible before they manifest into what could possibly be a physical issue.
Correct. Yeah. I think it's really key, to a person's development. Yeah.
Yeah, don't bottle them up. They just go to a different part of your body.
Exactly. They're just going somewhere else. Got to get them out.
Yes. Yeah. And then how do you support systems like family and community help men overcome stereotypes and other and toxic masculinity? Sorry, I was like, what are they overcoming?
No, you're fine. I think, there's so many resources, I think, that we can kind of tap into. There's some of the known ones, like your family. I think actually family can be tricky, because I think family, while it can be beneficial in some ways, it's also important to reflect and kind of notice the ways maybe it isn't as well. Our families tend to be huge influences on our life, and sometimes those relationships sometimes aren't healthy and maybe need to be reevaluated, and kind of noticing the patterns within your family, noticing maybe the potential biases that have been built up, or that you've been taught, inadvertently. And so I think while they can be a key resource in helping you overcome, it's also something important to kind of analyze and maybe look into deeper as to the things that you were taught as a child to kind of carry with you through life. As far as resources in the community, again, I'm going to shout out to mental health counseling. I think it is key to all of our developments. No matter what I think you've experienced in life, all of us could benefit from having space to talk about it, having an open ear, somebody to listen and help us maybe process things that are difficult and challenging. We're very complex people, filled with so much maybe past trauma, so much emotion, so much stuff thrust on us, that having an outside source to kind of navigate this with is really helpful in developing a stronger sense of self. I think some other areas that might not be as well known in a community that can be helpful is connecting, if you're Indigenous, connecting with the Native American community, wherever that might be for you. I know for me, it's been through the Native American Student Success Center at San Jose State. It has helped me a lot with connecting with individuals within my culture, but who are also from other tribes and kind of have shared their healing practices, their traditions that have been influential, I think, in my journey. So finding that key area of community, I think, is also really important. And it doesn't maybe have to be just Indigenous community. It can be, a gym community for some individuals. It can be an art community for other individuals. It's just finding that space in which you feel like you can thrive is so helpful. And in learning and letting those communities kind of shape friendships too, and how and maybe connect you with individuals that can kind of support you along your growth journey. Like we were saying, like having supporters in your life is so helpful and so crucial to your development. I know I keep saying helpful and crucial, but those things are. They are. You need to prioritize them. So
emphasis.
Yeah. Emphasis. Yes.
Sorry for anyone who doesn't catch that reference. It's Drake and Josh. Josh always would say emphasis. He would say it twice. Sorry, it's like locked in my head.
Yes.
And Josh has his own podcast now called The Good Guys. So if you ever are interested in listening to it, check it out. Shout out to the boys. Yes. Josh and Ben. Yeah. Like they know I exist. It's fun. In my head, we're friends.
Yes. We're friends.
But IHC, we believe that culture is medicine. So what does culture is medicine mean to you?
Okay. Yeah. I think culture is medicine to me looks like healing. I think, especially within my culture, I've learned so much about how generational trauma and experiences can influence your ability to navigate life successfully, whatever that might look like. I think success often gets kind of this attachment to, making a lot of money, but that I mean successful as in a healthy way of navigating life. I think culture as medicine means tapping back into those practices that maybe have been forgotten, or maybe you haven't participated in before, and allowing those things to soften you and to open you up and help heal parts of yourself. I know for me, culture is medicine is so much more than just the practices we have in a Hopi tradition. It also means like my Nani's house. It means the smell of her cooking. It's like that is medicine to me. Within my family, it means watching like smoke signals on a daily basis. Like it's so good.
Hey, Victor.
Yeah. And laughter too is I think a key part of that healing journey. That's one thing I am always so thankful to have. Like when I'm talking about my culture as far as being a Hopi individual, but also the culture of my family, is that when we connect, there's this sense of laughter that I'm so appreciative of. And I think something I didn't notice until adulthood that I'm just so grateful for is that my ability to connect with my brothers and my sister and our family and laugh and have a good time. And I think in a way that does help heal sometimes those things that were built up in us as far as generational trauma or the oppressions that have accumulated within ourselves. It's a way to overcome that and a way to show that no, joy will never be taken away from me. That this is my greatest form of resistance is my ability to laugh, my ability to experience happiness. And so to me, that is medicine too, like the attachment of community and culture and the joy I think that comes with connection. Yeah.
Love that. I think that was like the most in-depth response we've ever received on how culture is medicine to you. And I really appreciate it. That's a good thing.
Thank you.
That's not a bad thing.
Sorry.
I love that. Like the culture not just being your indigeneity, but also like the traditions and culture that you grew up with your own family unit.
Right.
And how that also plays an impact. I like that. Well, thank you folks for listening. We appreciate it. So if you would take a look at our screen, we have some upcoming events at Indian Health Center, such as every third Friday, we have our Produce Mobile, which is from 11:30 to 1:30 p.m. We also have our Two-Spirit group. We have our online group, which is every third Tuesday of the month online. For the month of June, our in-person Two-Spirit group will be on the second Thursday of the month, and we have a new location that we're held at. We are held at the Q Corner here off of Center Street or Center Road in San Jose, CA. So check out the screen and view some more information about those flyers. And you can also check out the information for upcoming events in our description of the episode below. Other events that we have are our dance and drum group that we have every week. We also have our movie night, family fun night. To stay up to date on our upcoming events, you can also check out our IHC website. It'll be indianhealthcenter.org/events. Thank you for listening so much. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. If you like our content, go ahead and check out our social media at IHC San Jose. Thanks again. Bye.